Trauma bonds, why we stay in toxic relationships, whether it's parents, family, and friends. So a trauma bond is a powerful emotional attachment, and it's formed through these cycles of pain and reward. It's not built on love or mutual respect, but rather on manipulation, survival instincts, and most definitely the scars of the past. Now, trauma bonds don't just happen in romantic relationships. They can also form with family members, with friends, with co-workers. And here's the issue. These bonds don't only affect toxic relationships, they ripple out and shape how you interact, build new relationships, even with yourself. So why does this happen? So trauma bonds stem from our brain's rewiring in response to trauma. When we experience danger or emotional harm, our brain floods with our stress hormone called cortisol. But in moments of relief, when the toxic person shows kindness or pulls back or brings us flowers, our brain releases these feel-good chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. So it creates this push-pull dynamic. And that's what becomes really addictive. What happens is it causes conflict. So on one hand, you feel this, and the other hand, you feel that. Conflict's not great. But for those who've experienced childhood trauma, this cycle may feel really, really familiar. And this is the big issue. If love was conditional as a young child, if it was inconsistent, if you've been tied to pain during your formative years, you might unconsciously seek to tolerate this dynamic in adulthood. So your brain learns to equate the pain with connection, and it leaves you stuck in these really harmful patterns. So this bond doesn't just affect toxic relationships, it changes how you show up in every part of your life. You might find yourself seeking approval at work, tolerating harmful friendships, or feeling really unworthy of healthy love. Trauma bonds don't just stay in one lane, remember. They shape the way you interact with your entire world. Now, there's 7 stages of trauma bonds. First of all, love bombing. This, where the relationship begins really intense, lots of affection, lots of love, shower you with gifts. Then trust and dependency. Once they've gained your trust, the toxic person works to make you dependent on them. So they form this dependency. You depend on them. Then they start to criticize or devalue you. So the dynamic shifts. And they begin to criticize you. They will point out your flaws, or they start to work on diminishing your self-worth. Then they start to gaslight. They start to control, and this is where they manipulate your perception of reality. And then resignation. At this point, you start to believe, well, I'm just stuck. They will also intermittently reinforce. So they alternate between kindness and cruelty. They start to reinforce this bond. And then lastly, you get this addiction to the cycle. This is catastrophic. So the relationship becomes addictive, and our emotional highs are really euphoric, but the lows just start to reinforce your unworthiness. But ultimately what happens is it casts this really long shadow over your whole life. They shape how you see yourself, how you relate to others, and what you believe you deserve. Really, really catastrophic. So if this is something that you're having to deal with, that you recognize that you need help with, in our trauma recovery method, fully supported program, we help our clients understand, become aware of, and work through their toxic relationships or toxic bonds. And we uncover root cause trauma. We go down to the real cause of your symptoms and your activation and your triggers. Have a super amazing day wherever you are. Bye.